take a look at what those priorities potentially could be or should be as part of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's budget speech, which is due to start just a few minutes from now. First up, we are expecting a roadmap for India's debt-to-GDP ratio to come down to below 50% by the year 2031. So that is one of our priority lists for Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. And then, of course, private sector incentives for creating jobs. We've seen schemes like the ELI scheme. We've seen, Priyanka, even the internship scheme, but nothing really in terms of concrete numbers coming out to suggest how efficient or how effective those schemes really have been as far as job creation goes. Next up, of course, we are talking about reduction to import barriers, especially the custom duty. Reject Priyanka is the expert here. We will leave it to her. The indirect taxes. We've seen a lot happen by way of direct taxes last year and GST last year, but these tariff barriers when it comes to customs duty, something that we will spend some time discussing. And then, of course, boosting the export competitiveness of our MSMEs. Add to that, and we'll get Siddharth Pai to weigh in on this. How do we increase spends and not just spends? How do we ensure that artificial intelligence gets absolutely streamlined in the budget speech and the policy action that comes by way of budget? More spending on research and development, action-oriented spending on research and development, and ensuring that skilling is something that she also spoke about, happens by way of not just policy mention, but policy continuation. And then multiple other schemes also that we have in mind. But let's actually take them one by one. And first up, I want to bring Barnik into this conversation. Barnik, I really want to spend some time talking about import substitution and export competitiveness, because we saw that it's not just our services sector which is contributing to the export story. We are also seeing an uptick in manufacturing. But a lot more needs to be done, because that is also directly related to job creation in the country. So how do we ensure that perhaps think out of the box, go ahead and make the environment not just incentive driven for economies outside of India to invest in the country, but also look at potentially FDI coming in from a country like China, given the fact that we are now at the cusp of at least relations improving?
So I think one of the biggest challenges for the budget, and which is why I think the trinity which you are mentioning is quite hard to pull off, is India has been finding it quite hard to attract not only foreign portfolio investors and FIs, but also scaling the FDI investments, which have stagnated between $60 to $80 billion a year, whereas the economy needs around $200 to $300 billion to increase the growth rate. I think the challenge is multifold. I think if you look at foreign direct investment, it is not just traditional investors from the US, which has been our largest source of investments, but also tapping into investment pools from the Middle East, sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East, if you look at sovereign wealth funds in the Nordics, and then coming to Asia, where you have Singaporean sovereign wealth funds who've been large investors in India. But then there are also Chinese vehicles which often operate out of Hong Kong and Singapore, for whom India may become attractive. And India has actually gone out of its way to prevent that capital from coming into India. So I think the stance we should take is very simple. As long as capital comes in, I think we should be fairly comfortable in attracting all colors of capital. We are now on the verge or about already the fourth largest economy at $4 trillion. For us to boost manufacturing, we need expertise, we need foreign direct investment, and we need a framework in which manufacturing in India is competitive. I think the challenge with PLI and everything is that it makes it competitive versus foreign companies, but it doesn't make us export competitive. There's very little incentives you can put. So I think while there's a lot of expectation from industry from PLI 2.0, maybe there'll be a KUSUM 2.0 in renewable energy. Yeah. I think there needs to be a very clear roadmap on how we wean the industry off sustained incentives towards being export competitive, because the opportunity for us, if you look at the export numbers, around $850 billion of services and goods. But the challenge for India is to get to $1 trillion of goods exports, right, which is where at 20% of that will be competitive and comparable to China. So again, a lot of things to do. I wouldn't expect any miracle silver bullets in the budget, but I would expect some motion to improve investment climate. I think the problem in investment is that we make 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Okay. Tax, retrospective tax decisions like which happened with Vodafone last decade and now which happened with Tiger are things which actually scare off investors, because the message to investors are clear, is that if your investments don't work, nothing will happen. But if it does work, we'll come and double tax you or figure out ways to get money out from you. That's not a good message for equity investors, particularly FDI investors. So some consistency in tax policy and tax enforcement has to be made clear to foreign direct investors Maybe we will not hear it in the budget, but I'm sure there are lots of task forces working on assuaging foreign investors who are raising concerns on consistency of tax policy, which is what they need.